Shirt show. All right, let's go.
Shirt show! Talking shirt! Shirt show! Talking shirt! Shirt show! Talking shirt! Shirt show! Shirt, man!
All right, episode 24 of Shirt Show. We're talking with Kevin from Stoked on Printing in Las Vegas. Let's go! Shirt show!
What up?
What's up, sir?
How you guys doing?
Oh, we're fighting.
Dylan's, I just figured out he's not a very good listener. You know, I thought for a while that I thought he was. He had me tricked, but yeah, he doesn't listen to me.
I feel like Andy has a picture of me in his office that he just bitches at all day long, and then he expects me to know in real life what he was talking about.
Yeah.
It's
well, I don't.
Like a cardboard cutout or something like that.
And it's full of fucking knife holes and darts and shit.
I don't, but I'm getting one now, so yeah, makes sense.
Just get my good side.
How are you, Kevin?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Really good. It's today I did not print any t-shirts.
Do you guys usually print on Sundays?
We don't, but I did yesterday. At least I said I did. Dylan seems to think it was fake, but
It's all Photoshop. Are you at the shop right now?
I am. Yeah, I just have all my stuff set up here, and it's just easier. We're actually, my fiance and I are actually finishing up building a house, so we're actually staying with her parents. So it's a little chaotic. So
It would have been cool. You could have sat down, had her parents next to you.
Yeah,
Brought them in on the conversation.
3 dogs running around, barking at whoever knows what. But
It's
yeah,
not bad.
so
Where's your new house going to be?
So it's like, I don't know how familiar you guys with Las Vegas, but it's actually like I'm moving out to like the edge of the desert. So it's kind of nice. For a long time, I've been living in like more like the central city. But I'm just like going out into the desert. So.
The only thing I know about that area, and this is probably horribly wrong, it's just from movies where it's like nothing but like empty desert. And then all of a sudden there's a city.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah. So we're
Seriously?
like literally.
That's really how it is?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Like we're literally like right in the middle of nothing. Like the closest city, like real city, you know, like is, I don't know, a couple hours away each way. So, but yeah, so it literally is. And like I said, we're like to the most south. We're moving to the most south end. And then past that is like, it's like BLM land. So it's like federal land. So
that's
like,
where all the bodies are buried.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You don't go out there. That's where all like, because all the coyotes, you know, if they do pop up, the coyotes get them.
Yeah.
So.
I like Googled where your shop was actually located, and you're like right next to the strip, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We're really close. So like,
that's crazy.
If you guys have ever been here, we're like right directly south of the airport. So like, if you're familiar with the area, but like, yeah, so like the airport's like kind of like in the center of the city, and then to the west is the strip. Like it is on technically Las Vegas Boulevard for a little bit of it. And then, yeah, we're like right behind it. So like to like the Mandalay Bay or like MGM.
Well, that's what I saw was like Mandalay Bay was like right there. And I was like, we're crazy.
Yeah. And Las Vegas is a really easy city to commute. So, I mean, really anything is within like 20 to 30 minutes, like 30 minutes is the longest. But yeah, it's super easy, but yeah, we're literally right there. So
you have this new house you're building. Is there a spare bedroom? And would it be cool if I moved in there? Cause I'm really in love with the desert. So
absolutely. Yeah, no, it's we have like a nice little downstairs, like junior suite, I guess. So you get your
in the
bathroom.
basement?
No, God, no. Our ground is like way too hard. So like, if you want to get a pool or a basement or something, it is like unbelievably expensive. Because you have to go through like legitimate like rock. But no, it's, you know, it's on the first level. We'll be on the second level, so we won't even like bother each other. You know, you have your own little space.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Now you're building for Stoked. Do you guys own that, or do you like rent it out?
So all of ours are currently leased. Yeah. So as far as like our buildings go, we're hoping like our leases end like in 2022. So we're hoping like to start the process maybe in like April to look at purchasing, like if it works out, like if it pencils out. If not, we'll probably just like lease again, and then do like at the end of that lease probably buy. It's just like really weird right now. There's a lot of like California companies who are leaving California to move here.
Right.
So it's like you would think with COVID and things like that, there wouldn't be there'd be a ton of like space that you could just buy like on the cheap, but it's actually kind of the reverse. We have like the lowest occupancy rate that we've seen in a while, and especially in like that 20 to 50,000 square feet. And then once you get above that, then you're looking at like more storage space. So there's no power, right? So like as we all know, we need like gas and power. So once you get up into those, it's like 200 amps, because it's mostly for like Amazon or somebody like that to do fulfillment out of.
So you said leases, plural. You have more than one space. Like, do you have an offsite storage or something like that, or?
We actually just moved. We're moving all of our fulfillment and all of our direct to garment stuff to a separate like 10,000 or it's like 9,000 square feet warehouse. So we're going to keep screen printing and embroidery together at our current facility, and then we're moving all of that over to. It's just down the road. It's like maybe 10-minute drive, so it's not too crazy. But that stuff kind of runs separately from like screen print and embroidery, so it's not going to be too difficult to manage. So
now, is like the property, like, is retail like super expensive out there because of how close you are to the city, or is it not too bad?
It's not too bad, and we're technically more in an industrial part. Like right next door to us is the UPS hub. So
Dude, that's
it's like
awesome.
Yeah, so that's really nice. I mean, it's been weird with COVID. They essentially have like changed up how their hours are, but before COVID, it was great because we could drop stuff off at like 6:30 or like 7.
Do you get stuff super early because you're close to UPS?
Yeah.
Like they drop off like first thing?
Yep, exactly. Like they like literally pull out of their gate and then they like do like a big U-turn and then like pull into ours.
God, I would love that so much. I feel like so much of the time we're waiting on something, or like I have to drive like a half hour, 45 minutes to the hub if like we printing something that has to go out that day and the UPS driver already came. So to just be able to like walk it across the street would be amazing.
So do you get only, so on your UPS deliveries, is it just UPS or do you get a separate courier service sometimes?
It's almost always UPS. Like they'll have they'll do like box trucks sometimes, or they'll just do like, it just depends on the time of the year, but we'll either get like 1 or 2 deliveries a day. And then we have another, like, I'm not exactly sure how, I think it's only on the West Coast, but there's a service called On Track that like Samar and Alpha Broder, they ship on theirs. So we get that a little bit later, but UPS is almost always like UPS drivers.
Dylan, what is yours, Andy? Because you were talking about you have a courier service. What is that for?
So remember when we talked to Chris from SNS and he said something about they have a cap of how many boxes can go out?
Right.
So that's maybe in some territory or some locations that doesn't happen, but here anyway, because I think most of what we receive ships out of Chicago or maybe Kansas City. What happens is we get our UPS truck, which probably has, 60 to 80% of our boxes. And then we get something called Speedy, and it's just another truck, that I guess what happens, is SNS hits their max. And so then they have to call the courier service, with UPS.
Yeah, I don't have that. I either have UPS or FedEx. And I feel like SNS now is like switching back and forth between UPS and FedEx of like which rate's cheaper or something. So I feel like on different days, I'm getting either truck.
Right. Yeah.
Well, so that's a bummer because we get our UPS at 10 o'clock, let's say, and Speedy can come anytime.
Yeah. Well, like FedEx, I've had it before, not recently, but FedEx, I guess, is like, they're like contractors mostly, aren't they? Like they have to bid on routes. It's not like you work for UPS and you're like that driver. It's like some dude in just day clothes, like in a FedEx truck. And it's just like, we've had it before where he was just like straight up like, I just didn't feel like driving today, or I didn't feel like stopping at your place, so I'll drop it off tomorrow. And it's like, dude, I need that shit like today. Like, what do you?
I think they have like a mix of both. I think they actually have like their own trucks. And then like you said, there's like privately owned and operated trucks that they like buy. Yeah, like you said, they buy the route.
And I I think UPS has a new thing too, which is funny because like the other day, our UPS driver was here picking up at like 5:00, and there was a guy, like an older dude. He was probably like 75 years old, getting out of like an old like Chevy Trailblazer or something, some like rusty SUV. And I was like, "Who's this guy?" And he's like, "Oh, we have these like extra delivery guys now because we're so busy that they just like hire people that have a car." Like a pizza delivery guy kind of thing where they're just like take out like, 10 packages and deliver them and we'll pay you. But he's like, I asked the guy and he's like, yeah, they can kind of do it at their own pace. And I was like, that's really weird. Cause he's like, yeah, his day started at like 1 PM. So he's going to be out delivering boxes till like 10:00 at night. And I'm like, this guy's not wearing a UPS outfit at all. Like, so you're telling me fucking old man Phil is going to walk up to my house at like 9 PM with a box and I'm going to not think it's a bomb? Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, how does he not at least have a vest that says UPS on it? Like,
Yeah, exactly. Like get him
it
something.
doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
So I was checking out your website and it said that on your history, it said you started in a spare bedroom. So was that a home office thing, or were you printing shirts in that bedroom?
No, we were printing. So we actually started when I was, when my partner and I were like 16 or around there. And it's, a very similar story to like a lot of people. We were in a band and we were like, hey, we did a tour, in California and we like bought some shirts off of Buddy. And we were like, hey, we're going to be picking them up. And he's like, all right, cool. Yeah. Like you guys can just stay at my house, while you're here. Like, and we're like, all right, perfect. And we show up and we're like, hey, where are the shirts? And he's like, I just got to print them. And we're like, you're going to print them here? And he's like, yeah, no worries. And like, so he just printed them really poorly. Truly, like he was literally like last minute kind of thing. And we're like, dude, if this guy can do it, like we should be able to, we just paid him money for these things. Like they're not very good. And so we're like, let's just try to like figure this out. My partner Shane, he was like, let's just try to figure this out. I was like, all right, let's give it a shot. So he bought like a Ryan silver press, and I bought the flash unit. So that was like kind of like our like first investment into the business. Yeah, we were like, all right, I'll buy the flash unit. And we had the flash unit honestly for like up until like 2 or 3 years ago we were using it. But anyways, so then we just set up like it was just like a tabletop press. It was like a 4-color 2-station, but it didn't like carousel, right? So it was like static arms. And we just set it up on like just like a movable table or whatever, like one of those wood like tables.
Why would that work? I've never even heard of that. I can't figure out why would that work if you can't index your pallets. What's the point? So you would have 2 people, I guess.
The thing was what we did, because we also didn't have a dryer. So what we did is we printed on one pallet and cured on the other pallet with the flash unit. So it was definitely not super safe. And it like really sucked like after you got like 30 shirts in. But yeah, so like that was, and then we just like, my dad helped us build like an exposure unit with like big halogen bulbs. So it's just like that classic story of like, washing stuff out, but we were like 16 or 17 at the time. So we weren't really doing many orders for like anybody else. It was just for us. So we had a lot of time just to like figure things out. We had like this one like really DIY punk friend who was like, you do not want to use plastisol. Like you only use water base. Like plastisol is ruining the planet. And we're like, I don't know, fair
eating
enough.
lettuce out of a bag.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and we're like, we had no idea. We didn't know what to do. So we're like, all right, fair enough. Whatever. So we did that, which was a nightmare because we're in Las Vegas and it was like the middle of June. And then we ended up like, because this is at my partner Shane's house, his parents' house. And so we ended up washing it out like in his parents' like front yard. So like his parents' like front yard, like their dirt was just like stained for like 5 years just because it was just like blue and red. And like we're just like washing stuff out. And we're like, it's water based. It's going to like go away, at some point. But yeah, no, it was rough. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't have done it again, like starting that way. But it's just like this, I don't know. It's a similar thing that we all do, right? Like we don't know what we don't know until
we get try a bunch of shit out.
Yeah. So
yeah.
But yeah. So we're actually printing out of that.
Before when I was out of the garage, before I had a washout, like an actual booth, I would wash out screens, clean screens, and also just rinse screens after I exposed them out on our deck. And I did this all 4 seasons too. So like literally in January or whatever, I'd go out there and turn the water on and it was frozen, So I would have to keep the nozzle like inside. We had a sliding door there and I'd try and keep it warm, warm enough not to freeze.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It was a mess.
What do you think? What do you think you would have done if you guys didn't get into printing?
It's hard to say because what happened really. So I was playing. We were both playing in bands throughout that whole time, and I was in a band that actually like did like somewhat like decent. Like we actually got like actual a contract from. It was a metal band, so it's not like it would be like we would have been gigantic. But it was with this label called Metal Blade Records. So we actually got, an actual signed contract from them. So what I did was right after I graduated, we like essentially just like went on tour. Like we went on tour and like recorded and like wrote an album. And then I was in like probably like I think I was somewhere in Tennessee and I was just like burnt out and I was like I just can't do this anymore. And Shane the whole time was actually he just continued to print. And then every time I came home from tour, I'd help out, but I wasn't like super involved.
Right.
And then I was like somewhere in Tennessee and I was like, dude, like I just can't tour anymore. I'm just like sick of like living in this van with these 4 other dudes.
Just too much van farts.
It's way too many van farts. And it was like in the middle of winter too. So we're like living, like we did a run of like 70 days straight and like 45 days of those was on the East Coast in the winter. And so we're just like living in snow and I was just like miserable and like getting a cold, then getting like well, and then like getting another cold. And so, anyways, so I called Shane, somewhere in Tennessee. I was like, dude, I'm done. Like, let's just like, I'm going to come back, after this run and like, let's just like hit it hard. And he was actually, during his day job, he was doing like, building, sets for like trade shows here. So, his dad was like a stagehand kind of guy, like pretty high up in that union. So he kind of got like grandfathered in to like building sets. So he'd probably still be doing that. For me, like, I don't know, maybe I would have went to college or something. I don't know. I was never really good in school. So it was hard to say. Maybe I'd be selling like real estate. I don't know. But
at that point, when you said, I'm going to come off the road and let's do this, let's go all in on screen printing. Were you still out of that bedroom?
No. So he actually had like built up a little bit of business. And I say he, because I didn't have any like part in like that. From going from that spare bedroom to he upgraded to the garage, so he upgraded to the garage. He got like a, I don't know, like a 1991, like Riley Hopkins 4-color 6-station,
with joystick.
No. So this one had still the regular, just like 2 knobs, It wasn't fantastic. And like 2 of the heads had like micros that were like, it felt like they were welded on because you could not move them. Like we could not grease them up enough to actually move them. So we just never even used them. And then he got like a little Harco, like
brown
like a Harco, like little dryer, like conveyor dryer, which was sick because we had been like, curing on a pallet. So to actually like put it on something, I was like, all right, cool. This is great. So I got back and I was like, dude, he's set up. Like, we're good to go, like, let's get like a shop, eventually, like, let's try to get like a little bit more business. And then like, let's try to get like a little shop or something. So
did you have that role in the band where like you were kind of felt motivated to be the guy to like promote stuff or figure stuff out? I feel like a lot of the guys that start shops from a band were always that guy who was like the one promoting shows or the one like in charge of the band management or stuff like that. Did you have any hand in that or?
No, not really. So Shane, my partner, he was that dude for sure. Like he was booking the tours and for a little bit he was actually booking tours for like other bands. So I'd kind of like help him out like a couple times with that. But in our band, I was the bass player. So I was like the lowest on the totem pole. Like I was like, hey,
well, that's what's funny is because like
load out.
That's what's funny because that's what I was going to ask because it was my role too as bass, and I feel like the bassists always feel like they have to make up for the fact that they're not doing much in the band to be like, oh, well, I'll like help us get shows, or I'll like do the art for the flyers, or I'll do this or do that or whatever. And it's kind of like, I feel like those are the guys who usually end up being like, oh, I learned a bunch about band merch. Now I'm going to get out and I'm going to do it myself.
Yeah. Our guitarist, Robbie, he kind of was like more the business guy. I guess I was more of like the intermediary. Like I kind of was like the guy who kind of went in between the band members and like chilled them out, you know, like
right.
when one guy was like, dude, he's like, I'm so sick of him. Like, he'd be like, Kevin, what do you think? I'm like, hey, I think you guys should just like work it out because we literally sleep inches from each other. So I think we should just kind of get over this and like drive to the next show. But my partner Shane, he was definitely, and it's still kind of that way. Like I'm more of the relationship type of person, and he's like more of like the data, like integration guy, you know, like, he's the guy who like gets shit done, you know? Right. But,
what's your role now at Stoked? Like what are you in charge of, I guess?
Yeah.
Well,
so
he's the bass player, so
I'm still the bass player. Yeah. I just come in and hang out, you know, like just
the face,
make sure everybody's like doing good. No, I've actually been like I'm the head sales guy, I guess you can say. Like technically now we're building like more of a like corporate structure. So technically my title is like the chief revenue officer. So I'm like kind of building out, you know, like looking for opportunities and figuring out like, okay, cool. Like what do we need to do to get here? And then working with Shane to like work on a technical side as well as like an equipment side. So
you got to figure out all the systems and get them down to where you can hire people and just show them how, basically.
You're not ever stuck in like day-to-day operations.
Not
there or whatever. You don't fill that role.
No. Yeah. So on production side, no, like I'm definitely, and neither really is Shane anymore. We have floor managers in each one of the departments. And then above that, we have a director of operations. And then we just hired, that similar, like that, I guess like a lateral level position with even in like customer service. So we're calling it like the customer experience manager or the director of customer experience. So like she's coming in and she's like super, like I'm not the most organized person. So like I'm the kind of, I like, we'll do meetings and be like, okay, like this is what I want to do. I want to do this, this, and this. And she's like, all right, cool. Like sets up like actionable items to like knock out, and then we'll like split those up, as well as like she's helping like with customer escalation. So like when somebody's like super like upset, she's like helping out, you know, smooth that over. Whereas that was mostly my role for like the last like 10 years.
I really like that title, that director of customer experience. Where did you find her and what's her background?
Yeah, so she's actually our artist's wife. Our head artist's wife, and she was working at Zappos for like the last 8 years. So she headed their studio. So they were doing like all their own product shots and all that type of stuff. So she was the one who kind of built out a lot of those like standard operating procedures, as well as like building out the team and managing the team and getting things done. So on top of that, just being in that Zappos culture, she's kind of able to distinguish like, hey, these were really cool things we did there, and here's some like not so cool things that didn't really work great. Because I don't know how familiar you guys are with Zappos, but they're a very experimental company, or they were for a long time, as far as like like employee and customer engagement, like how well people interacted inside the company, as well as like how they interacted outside the company to them.
So how do you get to that point, I guess, like where you and your buddy are starting a shop, and then you get the shop going and you're like, all right, I need to hire somebody to basically like take over essentially your position, you know what I mean? Because you're the manager, you're the one telling people what to do, to be like, all right, now you're going to do this and I'm going to step back to focus on bigger picture things. Like, do you just take a leap and give somebody like, because even that title's got to be worth a lot. You know, it's not like you're hiring somebody to do something like that. Like, what was your thought process when that happened, I guess?
Yeah, I think every shop wants to know that. Like every shop needs or wants, if they don't have a director of operations, you know, that can.
I feel like that's been something like for me is it's like, you get to a point where you're just like, man, it'd be really great if I had somebody, not even for that role, but any role, like to be like exactly what you're saying is like, I would love to go after X, Y, and Z customer or whatever, but I would love it if I had somebody that just did nothing but like research and figured out the best way to do all these things. But it's like, how do you hire somebody for that? You're just like, hey, especially in my area, like I don't have people that usually have that talent, I guess, without bringing them in, you know what I mean? Or being like, oh, I found somebody in Chicago. I'm going to fly them out here.
Yeah.
Right. And then I'm going to give them a crazy salary to do this thing. I feel like most of the time it's a risk. It's like, you don't know if it's going to work out until they're here and you see if it's going to happen. And then if it doesn't happen, like, what do? You're just like, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, like creating contracts is a really good way of doing that, so like, if you put somebody like on a 1-year contract, you're really only locked into 1 year. So,
right.
But to kind of go back, I mean, it's taken a long time. I mean, we've been doing this for 10 years, so for the longest time, it was just like, I'd say the first 5 years were, how do we produce consistently good work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what do we need to do to consistently like push out good stuff and not have to worry about it? Because I think a lot of people, like, they struggle with like marketing and they struggle with all those things. When really, I feel like they mostly have like a process problem. Like they have an issue with actually creating a good product. Like if you could if you can go out and say, I'm going to produce your 100 shirts perfectly, here's a good price. And you could just like have the clear conscience of knowing that's going to get done. You can keep doing that. You could just like step and repeat. So moving into like getting these higher level people, it's really like, how much do you value your time? Like what is your hour worth? Right. So if then you decide, okay, like, and you have to be realistic with yourselves. You have to say like, what value can I bring if I bring this person in to take over this stuff?
Right.
Because
you can't just be like, I'm going to hire somebody. And then when you hire that person, you're just in your like at your desk with your feet up being like, I'm not going to do shit now.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah. And at a certain point, maybe some people like that. My partner and I were very slightly paranoid all the time that we're like gonna get found out that we're not that good or something. Like, so we're always trying to work on like, okay, how do we be better like every day? And like, what's a new thing we could bring in that keeps us alive, and it keeps us moving and it keeps us up to date with the times. So with that, there's a cap of how much energy you can expend every day, right? So like, what's more important? Like, is your energy better spent, answering emails all day, like putting out fires, all those things? And at a certain point, it is the most important thing because you can't afford that role. But at a certain point, you have to determine like, if you want to go to that next level or take that next step, you have to take that leap to let that go. And generally, every time we've taken that step, like whether it be a floor manager or like the director of operations, like it gets done so much better than I would have done it, because that person's like primary focus, like with this director of customer experience, their primary focus is like, how do we make the best experience for our customer? Like I maybe have that vision like 20% of the time. The other like 20% is like, okay, like we got to focus on payables and receivables. And the other 20% is, this person doesn't like this person in the screen room. Like we need to like sort that thing out and like
randomly putting out fires.
Yeah. And then also like, how do we stay alive? How do we keep staying alive? Like that's a huge, I think as business owners and especially in the screen printing world, it's like a lot of our energy gets taken up with like, how do we not die? Because that's where we need to like stay alive the longest amount of time because that's when opportunities come in. But
and I feel like exactly like what you just said is like super important to me because I'm constantly like, manager and business owner and, trying to put out fires all day. But like, I constantly am like researching stuff about printing or processes or this and that. And like, I literally have like folders on my phone. I have folders on my desktop of like all these like things I want to try or do like marketing wise or, design wise or all this other stuff. But it's like, I really wish I could just hire somebody to be like, hey, here's this whole thing that I have, like go figure it out and research it and implement it into this business because I personally just don't have the time to do those things. And that's when it's like, I'll grab one here and there. I'll be like, all right, I'm going to do this thing now. And then I do it and implement it. And it's like, all right, cool. I feel good about it. But I feel like we could get to such another level if I was just like, had somebody just figuring that shit out all day long.
That director of operations, did you promote from within, or did you put an ad out somewhere on LinkedIn or something like that to find them to seeking director of operations, or how did that work?
Yeah, so she actually just started a couple weeks ago. We had one pre-COVID, like for 6 or 7 months. It was like an industry veteran person. They just been around for the longest amount of time, right? And he came in and he brought in some good ideas. However, it wasn't like the ideas that we needed, So he came in and he was like, "Hey, like, have you tried trying this white ink or this and that?" And we're like, "Dude, like, I have not had an order where somebody said like this white ink's bad in a really long time, So like the white ink's not the problem right now. Like, I have a problem like receiving in boxes, Like if 300 boxes show up, we have a problem like with the logistics of like counting in all those boxes and like getting the workflow, and like we have like we're okay like at getting packages of stuff to the press, but we're not like fantastic, Like, so what we did is we actually went completely outside the industry. Once again, she worked at Zappos, and she's like logistically minded, like she's like Six Sigma, like. And that's the type of Shane and I kind of came to the conclusion, like, we don't have a problem with printing. Like, we have really talented printers. We have really talented floor managers who know how to do all those things really well. However, like, they're not logistically minded,
Right.
They're technically minded. So like, we should bring in somebody from like completely outside. She has no idea. Like, she called ink paint, and we're like, all right, first of all, it's not paint. So like, but but she's like super positive. She's a really awesome person. And she thinks about things in a completely different way, because I think we all kind of get into a circle of thinking of how things need to be done. So it's kind of nice to have this fresh eyes on the matter.
Exactly.
Is Zappos headquartered in Vegas or something?
They are, yeah. So and they just like kind of fired the CEO. So a lot of and then they like gave a lot of people severance. So there's like a ton of like really, really talented people who are just kind of like, all right, looking for their new next opportunity, so.
Do you get a bunch of work from just being in Vegas, like for the events that happen there?
Not really. Yeah. We don't really focus too much on like the Las Vegas market. We do some casino stuff. We do that, but we're mostly shipping out like nationally. We do a lot of work like outside of Las Vegas.
Right. What kind of work is it? Are you like a certain percentage of contract and a certain percentage of direct to customer, or?
Yeah, we're about like 50-50. Like as far as like revenue goes, but more like, I mean, obviously that translates to like 70% of our production is contract. So, but yeah, so we deal with a lot of promotional product distributors, like nationally. So,
yeah, I watched, a thing you did with Bella Canvas where you were talking about how the one thing you wish you did was got a shop management software sooner.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your process and getting that.
Yeah. So we had for like the first 3 to 4 years, like a homegrown, like Excel type of like situation, where we're like, we built it all out in Google. So like we had like a Google Forms and like doing QuickBooks for the accounting, and it was just like not good. And then we moved over then we made the jump into Shopworks. And that was cool. Like, I think Shopworks is great. Like, I think as far as like a shop management tool, it's really good. It's just built on FileMaker, and the guys who created it are not very concerned about building onto it, right? Like it's just kind of like a thing that they built that works. It's consistent, and they don't really care to like push things forward. And they're also limited by FileMaker, like what FileMaker does. So earlier this year, we actually switched over to a company called Impress. So we've been doing that, and it's been an experience, but it's generally positive. It's allowing us to open up a lot of doors that we couldn't with Shopworks.
Right, and it's kind of laughable because that's my problem, and I feel like we're super efficient and we definitely get things done. And I feel like this company basically runs itself. Like I don't need to be here. Everybody, even who's here, like if they're gone, like things still kind of happen and do exactly what they're supposed to do. But I don't generally have like a purchased shop management software. I do it like, and me and like even Bruce, we've had this conversation, or Inksoft, they try to get me to use their stuff. And I'm like, what I have works.
Yeah.
But it's not like, like I had a conversation with Bruce about his software, and he was just like, well, tell me what you're doing now. And I was like, all right, well, when a customer pays, like I write it down and then I hand that paper at the end of the day to like the person who does the schedule or whatever. And he's like, oh my God. And I'm like, yeah, I understand that's not like the most efficient. And like, you probably have something where you can click this and it automatically adds everything to the schedule and does all this. But like my brain of like, when you start a company that you don't know jack shit about business, you don't know jack shit about anything, you find something that works. It's just like, okay, cool. I'm going to do that from now on. Like this works, move on, do something else.
What's your, Dylan, real quick, what's your evolution of scheduling? Like from day one, your very first order to now?
Dude, it's
like,
literally the same thing.
The same exact
Yes.
thing?
Is it just like a whiteboard or something? Or
No. Like
I don't think he even does that.
No, I don't use a whiteboard. No.
So what was your? Go ahead.
We use basically Google for almost everything, and then we use FreshBooks for invoicing and bookkeeping, all that stuff. So like my accountant has the login for FreshBooks, so they can see like everything we're doing and the money coming in and all that other stuff. And then our scheduling is all on Google Calendar, and then we just like change colors for things, like if it's counted in or if it's films are done, or not films anymore, but you know what I mean? Like if that stuff's done, and then when the job's done, it's grayed out and we keep going. Like we're not doing it by the hour. We're just like, okay, I know this press can do this many jobs. This press can do this many jobs, and so on. But it's just kind of like doing that, and the way it goes from sales to art room to screens and out to the production floor. Like it just works the way that we do it. And it's not like super archaic, but it's like, as far as me getting payments and stuff, it's like, yeah, I'm fucking writing it on a piece of paper. But for me, it's like
incredible that you've been able to scale from that. I mean, that means you chose something at the beginning pretty good. Kevin, what's the evolution from you started in the bedroom to now? Like how is that?
As far as scheduling?
Yeah, scheduling. Because I think that's one of the hardest things that for us anyway, as we scaled and grew from one order a day to, what we are now, like how that worked. So what was your evolution?
So when we had that homegrown solution, it was very similar to like kind of what Dylan was saying. Once we get into Shopworks, like once you see the benefit of like having an all-inclusive system, as far as like when you put in a sales order, it drives so much of the functionality, right? Like, so it will then say like your artists will have their own calendar of things to do. And then your production has their own calendar of things to do. And sales reps. And now we've gone even further with Impress, where there's tons of automation that we do just by the sales order entry, just because you want to be able to have, like, a lot of the data is very similar, right? So like if you could put all that data in at the beginning and have workflows move that data to the people who need it is the most efficient way. So with Shopworks, it has a really good scheduling tool. And you can schedule it. We generally schedule down to like within 15 minutes. So we allow like a little bit of, and it's always fine tuning, right? It's just, okay, well, like this worked today, like, okay, like cool, then we're good. And then 2 months from now, it's like we're falling behind. So then it creates like alarms to say like, well, like what's happening? Oh, that press is like double hitting things, or like that press is ripping screens. Well, why are they ripping screens? Oh, because like the flood bar is nicked, or like there's just like all those things that it just sets off alarm bells that we can then like go in deeper. Because generally what happens, like when a schedule is not being hit, it's not just because people aren't trying. It's like there's 5 levels of things that are like happening, or like the screens aren't getting done in time. So then now with Impress, it's pretty complicated, but we have a full-time scheduler. So that's like his job is to create the schedule and to like update the schedule. And then he goes out, and then, so generally at the beginning of every day, each press and every station, like, so whether it's DTG or, embroidery or laser or screen print, they have a full list of like what they need to get done. And then, so they just knock it out, and then we could kind of determine at the end of the day, we sign off on those papers and see where we ended up. So
I've never heard of Impress. Is that industry specific? Is that a screen printing industry software, or is that something else?
it is, yeah. So they've been around for a while. They had a really not great looking like interface, but they were purchased by a company called Open Systems, who own a bunch of like industry specific, like they have one for like the cannabis industry and the auto industry, and they just like have very niche products. And then they have like their own accounting software. And so what happens is like Open Systems bought them, and they now have, it's called like Impress Global. So the reason we moved to that is it's built like on SQL, so on a SQL language. So we're able to now like build apps into it. Like, so for instance, we just had their art approval system was not very good. Like customers weren't super happy. Our artists were going to quit if they had to keep using it. So we're like, all right, well, this sucks. Like, so we talked with our artists. We're like, what does a good art approval system look like? And he's like, well, what, Shopworks had, Shopworks has a pretty decent proving system. And so we're like, all right, cool. We'll just build that. So we went and we built our own art approval system. So
that's awesome.
And then,
so you can add your own systems to it.
Yeah.
You don't have to rely on what they have.
Yeah, because what we're doing is we're just like, so it's technically like an ERP, right? So like with an ERP, you have but just think of it as like the center system, like the sun, I guess you could say. And then you could just build apps off of it. And that sun is just feeding the data out, right? And so it's just feeding the data out, and then you could push data back in. So then what we're doing is we're having the artists, and they like type in the sales order number. And so then they'll type in the sales order number into this proofing system, and then it pulls in all that data into it, and like the who to email and all that stuff. They upload the artwork, they send it, and it sends out to the customer. And like if they approve it, we shoot it back into Impress saying, hey, this is approved now. Like we're good to go.
Is that why you chose Impress? Is because you could build on the back end, whatever, you could kind of customize it? I mean, is that the reason? Because there's a lot of options, right? And so why Impress?
Yep, that's the reason. Yeah, so it's not cloud-based. So like you have to be like on our network to do it. So that's kind of like a downside versus like something like Printavo, where you can access it on your phone or anything like that. And it's pretty expensive. Like there's a pretty big price tag on it, but it's like one of those things where, it also has a really good warehouse management system, so like tracking inventory, tracking all of these things. It allows it so eventually like our workflow for like inventory is going to look like this. Like we're going to place a box onto a shelf, and we're going to scan that shelf and the barcode on the box so that the system knows, okay, that box is in that shelf. And then when we take that box off the shelf, we're going to scan that onto a cart. So then we can track that cart. Like we know where it's at. Because I don't know about you guys, but we lose boxes. Like boxes just like seem to like sprout legs and like walk out of the building. And we're like, where did that box go? And everybody's like, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. And so it's like, I don't think anybody's stealing them, but I just think like maybe it got shipped, or like maybe it's like, I don't know, so we have that issue. It just happens.
See, I feel like
boxes coming in and out so much.
I feel like everything you described, it makes a total sense for your shop. Like it makes sense because especially with contract, like you want to make sure you're getting as many jobs done efficiently a day as you can, and you're trying to dial things in like super, intense. So yeah, that makes a ton of sense just for what you're trying to do. But for me, I think it's like the scary thing for me, and it's probably something I just need to get over and do, is the fact of like, we've been doing everybody here knows exactly how things run. And to just be like me to make the decision to be like, oh, all right, we're going to use this new software now. And then everybody has to like relearn how to do everything in a new software. Like to me, that's the scariest thing, is to just be like, all right, let's figure this new thing out. And then half of them are like, why the fuck are we switching? And then the other half are like, all right, we'll figure it out. And then shit just starts getting messed up, and jobs aren't going out on time and like all this other stuff, because I get that there's like a growing period and like a transition period to it, but I'm just like so busy with stuff that I'm like, maybe later. And like I said, people like Bruce or, Inksoft or stuff, they're always like, all right, let's schedule like an onboarding thing, or we'll show you how to use this. And I'm just like, call me in 2 months, because I think I might have time to do it then. You know what I mean? And then 2 months goes by and I get that phone call of like, are you ready yet? And I'm like, just give me 2 more months.
Yeah. Well, Dylan, if you hold out long enough, maybe the nostalgia will come back and like on trend.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing. That's what's going to happen is people are going to be like, oh yeah, I was using this huge, like super expensive software, but I figured out that only pure geniuses use loose leaf paper to write it all down. Like, no joke. I can show you right now. No joke. This is the end of Friday. Like, I don't know if you can see this. No, it's too bright. These are payments on a fucking orange sticky note from the end of Friday that I will fill this and I will hand it to Chris and be like, add these to the schedule. Like, that's my fucking system.
Yeah. Well, if it works, like that's
right,
why,
that's the problem, is that it works and like we're efficient and like we do great work and stuff goes out. And it's just like, I don't know, like, should I buy into these? Obviously these companies that want you to buy their monthly subscription service to do these things, like they have stuff to gain by being like, oh, come to us. And it's like, there's nothing broken. It's one of those, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it things. But I'm like, in my back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, but probably one of those systems is going to help me out here and like make me more efficient at this, or make it to where I don't have to do it. You know what I mean? Like somebody else's, the system is doing it.
Yeah. I think you just have to think about like what happens if you're not there, or like what happens if you're not there for like 2 weeks. Like, let's just say you get sick or you break your hip, or I don't know whatever happens to people, like, I'm not saying that's going to happen.
I'm gonna fucking break my hip tomorrow.
Bruce is going to come by with like a lead pipe and just like take your knees out. It's just like, it's those ideas. Like, we're not so reliant on individuals, right? Like we want the system to like run, and like, as far as you were saying with like the people aspect, it's just like conveying to them the why of this is going to be beneficial for them, right? Like you like talk to your people and like, what don't you like about your job, right? Like that's like that's a real question, right? You have to ask. It's like, what don't you like about it? Okay, cool. Like, let's try to fix that, and there's always going to be problems, right? Like we just had a big meeting on like Impress is coming out at the end of this month. And we had like an hour meeting on Thursday with like the heads of everybody who uses Impress, like in a functional way. We're like, what don't you like? Like, we're going to go through this with them because there's, it's a big change, but also there's things that just are not working as they should. So we're like, all right, what don't you like about this? And it was an hour and we got really honest feedback and really good feedback about how to make it better for everybody, Well,
I don't know. I mean, I don't think that you're always going to make everyone happy.
No, I don't think so either.
You said, your artist was like, oh, if we don't get a new proofing system, we're going to quit or whatever. I think that there's probably, we've changed, when we changed from Trello to Monday, for example, about 90% were on board and liked it. And it was painful transition for a few weeks for sure. But there's still probably one, maybe two that wish that we were on Trello still. They just like the function for them anyway, and what they used it for, it just functioned better. But now they have to, because the greater good for the greater amount of people we switched to Monday, they're kind of stuck, not liking it, not liking it as much. So I don't know. It's really tough for everybody to. It's kind of like ordering pizza. Somebody's not going to like it.
Yeah,
well, or not like the topping or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're never going to make everybody happy. And it's mostly just finding something that just. It's all about like, does it make it better for the customer? Like if it doesn't, then we're not going to do it. But a lot of these features are like making it way better for our customers to like interact with us. So it's a worthy thing to like try to fix, And
I think for you though, it's super important to figure out where that box goblin is that keeps taking your boxes.
I would agree.
If you're losing shit, then that fucking that system is worth it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, and they pop up. They'll pop up like, and it'll just be like, how the hell did that box get there? And anyways, it's just, it's all.
Exactly. Do you nerd out on that kind of stuff, like systems and like trying to make things more automated or efficient? Or
I do. Yeah. Yeah, I do. And once again, my partner Shane, we probably wouldn't be on Impress or Shopworks without Shane. You know, he's the guy who's like, we're jumping in and we're gonna figure out what's wrong after we jump in. You know, like
Right.
we're gonna kind of get it moving, which is awesome because I'm probably the exact opposite. Like I overanalyze things like to the death, and like I just won't do things because I'm like, well, because of this and this and this and this, and then he's just like, no, shut up, just do this, you know? So like we have like a very good like relationship in that aspect, like where we just have strengths that I can come to him and be like, hey, I'm thinking about like, we should try this workflow. And he's like, oh crap. Yeah, that's a good idea. And like, he'll do the same, like he'll do a workflow and it'll just be like, I'll be like, that's a really awesome idea, you know? So
this is a good segue, Andy, for your goat thing.
It's a donkey, Dylan. But yeah, it can be a goat or a donkey.
Oh God! All right.
Yeah,
I'm just going to sit back and let you do this.
I think that was what you're talking about is like how you're like making a decision. Like if you're indecisive or if you're trying to decide or if you've got a lot of things to do and you're I guess you're just scared to make a choice. Goes back to this. I was reading this book about this donkey and so a goat. So pretend there's this goat, right? And he's on the left, there's some hay and on the right, there's water. And so they don't know hay or water, and they can't decide. So they end up dying of starvation and thirst, you know, instead of just taking one, not realizing that, hey, I have patience and I can look to the future. I can go get a drink of water and then go eat some hay. You know, I could do both. And it does. And so I guess the point, what Dylan was saying is like, just do one of them, do something anyway, you know, instead of
like dive in and then you'll figure it out kind of thing.
Yep.
Like, don't just be like, I can't decide. And then don't do anything at all.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, analysis paralysis is a real thing. Like my girlfriend, or she's my fiance. You guys should cut that out. But yeah, my fiance.
We're going to edit it. We're going to edit it in side piece.
I still call my wife my girlfriend sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
To her.
Yeah. It's been 5 years, you know, so it's like, you know, it's like just a second nature, but you know, she makes a joke about it all the time because like we were getting into, there was a shop, in town that makes like, they mix cereal with like, ice cream. So it's like a cereal milkshake and it's great. And I was like, man, we should just like start doing this at home. And she's like, yeah, you know, we have a blender. And I was like, yeah, we'll have to get that set up one day. And she was like, what are you talking about? Like, I was like, oh yeah, it's already set up. You just have to put the shit in it and it works, you know? But like, that's how like my mind works sometimes where I think like there's like 5 steps to get something done or something, you know, like, and it's just let
me lay out the plan,
just getting it done.
I'll execute it and
Yep, exactly. And then execution just never happens. So, but yeah, I think it's the same thing going back to the goat where I can totally just get stuck sometimes. Like
he said,
goat. Do we like do goat, the goat donkey? It was
I like goat better.
It was a mixed pack. There was goat and donkeys there, but the, yeah, like I could totally see that's a perfect parable to, being like a business owner because you have to kind of like make decisions all the time, like every day, you know, like, okay, this is what we're doing, you know?
Okay. Back to the goat thing. What is with goats and their pupils? Isn't that fucking terrifying how they're like horizontal and not like circles? Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
No, I've never even noticed.
Google goat eyes. It's terrifying. Goat pupils are rectangles. They're like width. They're wide. It's fucking creepy as shit.
Maybe it's
goat eyes.
Maybe they can see at night or something.
I don't know what it is. It's terrifying. Okay, whatever. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, yeah.
What like skills, I guess, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit, but like what skills do you offer the business and what are you not good at, I guess is the more important question to like, well, I mean, that's a real question. Like there's things I know I am fucking terrible at that like Chris or, you know, Brian or somebody here picks up the slack for me because, and it's not like I'm trying to do that thing. I've just acknowledged like, don't bring that to me because I'm terrible with it.
Yeah. That's that's a real thing. It's like, what is it? Hire people that, for stuff that you're not good at. I mean, so you're right, actually.
So that's my question is like, what is it that you're not good at and that you've come to terms with and you've hired somebody to take that over?
Yeah. So once again, I'm not like the most like organized person or like the most execution based person. So I definitely, that's the person like why I hired like the director of customer experience is like, she's an executor. Like she gets shit done. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Shane's a very similar way. He's a get shit done, which I think you have to have like the innovator and then the implementer. Right. So I'm more of like on the innovator side, I guess you can say. So I'm constantly talking to customers. Like I have like my superpower is like customer relationships,
Like
and sales. Yeah, like that. Yeah. So it's just like as far as like selling and just being passionate about like knowing what I'm good at and not, So
Mm-hmm.
like I definitely drive the customer relationships. I drive like the marketing and all those types of things. And then I let Shane kind of like help kind of plug put the pieces together, So like as far as this is probably a good example. So like 3 years ago, I ran into a guy at an Alpha Broder event, and he was talking to me about print on demand. And so this was like not very many people were talking about it. They weren't really doing it. And I was just like, print on demand, right? And then I took that information and I came back and I was like just doing a bunch of research and doing a bunch of different things. And I was like, this is something we could be really good at. Like this could be the next move past screen printing. So what I did was then from there on out, I was getting customer like feedback, like, is this something you'd be interested in? As people came in, I would like, all right, this person came in and they were talking about print on demand. So like, if I hear something over like 5 to 10 times, I know there's something there. And then I took that to Shane and I was like, hey, this is what we need to do. Like we need to get some DTGs in, figure that out first. And then we need to look at this like tech side of things. How do we connect into an e-commerce store? And then from there, I started building all these web apps and like doing all of these things. And then I kind of got like the UI and the functionality of everything completed. And I handed that off to Shane. And then he kind of took that and put that into in execution mode as far as like on a day-to-day basis, like how orders are going to get out the door. So, But yeah, I would say like my superpower is more like the relationships and like the innovator side. And then I definitely, my like non-superpower is probably like execution.
Yeah.
So.
I feel like I'm very similar with that. It's like I have the ideas and I'm very good at talking to people and getting them like to work with us and all that other stuff. But like the actual like doing of certain of those things, like I hand off to everybody else. Cause like it's the one thing that people kind of know now that like if they want an order from this fucking company, like don't talk to me. Like, you know what I mean? Like go to Sarah or go to Chris or go to whoever. It's like, just don't email me, because if you email me, I'll be like, yeah, cool, I'll get to you. And then like a week later, I'm like, hey man, sorry, I've been super busy. I'll get to you. And it just like keeps going. And it's like, even family members are just like, all right, I know to go to Sarah or whatever. It's just like,
oh yeah, my mom knows to go to like our CSR team, and she'll like CC me on it, but she, like is like, all right, hey Ashley, can you get this done? Because it'll just like sit in my inbox for like a couple days, and then
exactly.
I got one. So we have a ghostwriter now that ever since our last episode, and he has a question for us, or for you, I should say. And that is, we noticed your shop is incredibly clean, and we wanted to know if that is photoshopped, and if not, what are some good habits you have developed to keep everything free of ink, free of debris, free of lint, and that kind of stuff?
So it's not photoshopped.
It's Illustrator.
You guys, is my
you're frozen.
my video stuck? All right,
it's frozen. Yeah. Are you just really good? You're like one of those people that can talk with their mouth shut.
I couldn't tell if he was just like, at first I thought he was just like listening intently to my question. But then, all of a sudden he started talking.
I'm going to change the camera. So it's going to look a bit. All right. Sorry.
Oh,
all right, cool.
Look at that.
All right. So,
yes. So, so it's not photoshopped. What we do, and I'd love to take credit, but it's more so our team. We clean constantly. So like we clean like daily, and it's not like a big deal. It's more so like you drop ink, clean it up at the end of the, like, if you can't get to it right then, like maybe clean it up at the end of the day. And it's generally like a 5 to 10 minute. And then like once every couple weeks, we'll do like a deep clean where we'll just like sweep off like at the end of Friday, like take 30 minutes, just sweep off all the lint and all that stuff, because it's more so like saying like that why it makes people happier to work in that place. Like, like that's their zone, so it's like, hey, take care of your stuff, as well as it becomes like a hazard, like having lint everywhere is a super crazy fire hazard, so making sure to clean that up, because like if there's like a spark or something and it's going to all go, but yeah, so it's more so just like a little bit of cleaning, like all the time.
Yeah. I feel like that's the same for us. Like the reason why we try to keep the shop so clean is like, I try to hammer home all the time, like the importance of quality. And like, if something is going wrong on press or something doesn't look right, like they know to stop and like, let's figure it out and like make sure quality is number one. I feel like you can't push quality if your shop's dirty and fucking gross as shit. Like everything needs to be clean and organized and like where it needs to be. It's like you can tell the difference, like going to a car mechanic where there's that guy who they all have like Snap-on tools on the wall that they like fucking super take care of, and everything's super clean, and like you can tell people want to work there and be there, versus the place where there's just like shit everywhere and there's like, it's just gross, and the guys come out and they're just like dirty and covered and everything. It's like, yeah, you want to go to the other place. Like, it's just
and I think just even following you guys on your guys' Instagram, I think you guys both have a very clean shop too. And I think it just goes to show, like, when you guys probably notice, it's like when you have customers like walking in, like there is that air of like, yeah, like the mechanic story where they just completely notice, because especially if they are like a customer who's been like getting shirts and stuff for a really long time, they probably have horror stories of like, I walked in and like I left with like 2 ink stains and I like ruined my jeans or something, like, cause like they just swiped like a corner like the wrong way, but yeah, I think it's super important to just have like a clean, organized space, just for like mental health reasons too.
You remember the anal retentive carpenter from SNL? You remember that skit?
No.
At all? So it's this guy and he's a carpenter, and he, like, let's say he saws this piece of wood and some sawdust comes down and gets on the ground or whatever. Well, he sweeps it up and then puts it in like its own bag and then seals it and tapes it. He's just an anal retentive carpenter. So it's like the anal retentive screen printer, like I think we're sort of the same way. Like we clean as we go. Every time you see something, or if you're walking by, let's say somebody missed it and it's on the ground, there's some ink or something, we clean it. If you're putting ink into the screen and you drop it below the press, you clean it right then. We don't wait till later. We get it right then. And then just like you said, there's a deep cleaning then. Every couple of weeks there's a deep cleaning, and it's hard to schedule it because what happens if you have, a really busy schedule that day? So we'll find a spot that we know, okay, well, it's going to have to be soon, and we'll find the spot and we'll take an hour, usually at the beginning of the day or the end of the day, and we'll take an hour and we'll clean.
I mean, realistically too, as owners, like we can say this, but like I tell every employee that, like new employee that's on press or whatever, I'm like, this press costs as much as your house.
Yeah.
Like,
yes, it's true.
Could you please fucking take care of it for me? Like put grease in it when it's supposed to.
We don't
wipe
all
it
have
down.
Gauntlet 3s, Dylan. So maybe the press doesn't quite cost as much.
I'm just saying, like, fucking take care of this thing. It's not like I bought this press for like $35 and like whatever happens. Like, take care of the fucking thing.
And like you said, Kevin, we have, so our shop is wide open. If you come in the front door here and you go to our front counter to place an order, you can see the back, you can see the production. I wanted that. It's kind of like the restaurants you go to and you can see the kitchen. So you come in here and you can see the back, and, a lot of times, not so much now because of COVID, but we still do. We give a tour and we'll say, hey, come check it out. And also like, it's a perfect thing. Every once in a while we run right up to that deadline and a customer will come in and they'll be like, hey, I'm here for my shirts, and they're not done yet. I'll come up and be like, hey, come here. We're printing them now. Come check it out. And then we'll take them back there and they can see their shirts actually being printed.
And then you do like 5 misprints in a row.
They're like, wait, that's not the right red. And you're like, guys, cut it.
Yeah, it's never backfired on us. It's actually, it usually always works
idea.
out. And
I really like that idea.
I've had people pop on like Facebook Live and say, oh my gosh, they're printing our shirts right now. Check it out. And so
it's an awesome, it makes it like what we call like an unwow moment of like not having it done to like,
we save it.
It's like, hey, we wanted you guys to see this, They're like, wow, that's so thoughtful,
But I mean, if we have this dirty shop and there's just shit everywhere, well, then that's embarrassing. And then you end up not saving it. They're like, oh, I'm never coming back here or whatever. So yeah, exactly. It's always clean. So we give tours. We try to as much as possible because I want people to see that, everything in action. Like we do screen print in the back. It's not something that we make up or whatever. We don't job it out. We do that right here. Come check it out. So yeah. And we want it to be clean.
And the one thing that kind of, like I said, is kind of like unspoken, but it like for us as owners too, it's always like puts a smile on our face when you see a customer come in and they just immediately pull their phone out and start taking pictures. Like, ink walls and stuff. They're like, oh my God, it's so cool. And like all this stuff. But it's like stuff we see every day that we take for granted. And you're just like, oh, cool. It's like we've had people come in here that do like news stories or something on us, and they'll send a photographer, and the photographer's taking pictures of stuff that you're like, that's the most boring thing in the shop. Like, why are you taking a picture of that?
Yeah, you lose that.
And they're just like the last time somebody was here, they kept wanting to take pictures of the flash turning on. And I was like, no, like that's not the cool part. Like over here, like this is the cool part.
I think it's funny now that we all run our social medias, or I'm assuming you guys do. But, or at least take pictures sometimes for your social media and I'm so used to knowing what to get pictures of or whatever, or if I get pictures of this or videos of this too often, I'm like, I just can't even, like who cares about that anymore? I'm like, I'm so over getting a video of that. But then somebody, like you just said, comes in to get a video for their brand or whatever it's going to be. And they go to that obvious, super obvious touristy thing that you're like, no, don't take that picture. Come over here.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. Like there was a customer that in my eyes was like, high profile. And I was kind of like they run a really good social media thing and they have a big podcast and all this stuff. And, you get talking to them about it. And one of the things he said to me was just kind of like, it's really cool that you show the process and you show like all this stuff and you show like how a shirt is made. And in my eyes of doing it so long, you get jaded to you're like, I don't think people want to see that anymore. You're like, I don't think they want to see this step or whatever. And he was just like, oh, I love that you show like that step. And I'm just like, that's the stuff I don't want to fucking post anymore. Like, I don't want to post like this one color white shirt getting printed or whatever. And he's just like, I love that stuff. And I'm just like, God damn it.
we just did one where it was just our computer to screen, like printing onto the screen, like nothing. It was just that was the only video, and it got like the most engagement we've had in like 4 months. And I'm like,
I've had one exactly like that. Yeah, I've had one exactly like that where I basically took I had like a tripod with a cell phone, the stretchy one or whatever that holds the phone on the tripod. Well, I just like screwed that to the rafters above the eye image, and I put like the phone in there, and I just did like a time lapse, and I did like a 12 color print, like every frame or whatever. That's up there with like one of the highest viewed videos of like just like doing every screen, and it was just like that's it. It was like this is how we make each screen. Yeah. So
on Friday, I posted one where I literally just pushed record and spun in a 360 in our screen room. And then when I posted it, it actually glitched and it went like skip. So I was like, whatever. And I just let it go. And it has crazy, I got all these messages and everything. And it took 1 minute or less. Yeah. It's funny. And then the video I work on for 2 hours, then it's like, whatever.
Yeah, people just forget about it. Yeah, they don't care. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Well, there was something like when I was looking up stuff for this episode that I realized is we've done all these episodes so far, and one thing we never talk about is apparel. Like we never talk about blanks. We always talk about inks. We talk about presses. We talk about fucking systems. We don't ever talk about the actual apparel we print on. So I wanted to ask you guys, like, what are your go-tos or what like are your favorite blanks to print on right now? Because I know like through the years we've always had like different ones, like, oh, I really like this one now, I like the fit, I like this, but what are your kind of like top go-tos or things that aren't the normal thing that you're like, oh, I really love this, but not a lot of people know about it?
Yeah, I'd say the one we sell the most is probably the Next Level 6210. And that's personally my favorite shirt. I like wearing that shirt the most just because I think it holds its body really well.
Yeah.
And it's super easy to print on. Like everything looks really good on it. You know, something that's been a lot more popular is like the AS color stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just being.
Do you sell a lot of that? They're closer to you though, aren't they?
Yeah, they're just a 1-day ship from us. We do. Yeah. They're just like a little bit higher of a price point, and sometimes their stock is just like not there.
I feel like they have super nice stuff, but my problem is I have to order it direct from them, and it's a 5-day ship.
Yeah, that you can't.
Yeah,
do that. It's hard. Yeah,
right,
no,
exactly.
yeah. So they have awesome stuff, like, and they're really good. It's not necessarily like my body type. I think it's like really narrow. Like it's a really narrow fit.
Yeah.
So I really like that. You know, I think the 3001, I think Bella Canvas from like a color perspective is like the best option. I think like they're super on point with their colors.
But they rarely have stock in the colors that are like new colors.
Yeah, that's the beef I have with it, where it's like, God, I really love that.
They're like that ice cream store that has like, we have 335 flavors, but we never have 320 in stock.
Yes, it's exactly. Like yeah, it's like, why do you guys keep doing this? Because like, yeah, like that brick color, for instance, right when it came out, I was like, I love this shirt. Like I want to do like, you know, I want to do like shop shirts with this. And it was just like not there. No, I like reached out to them like, when are you guys going to get it? Like, we don't know. You know, because the problem is
they came out with that Black Heather shirt. And like as soon as they came out with it, it was gone for like so long because everybody bought it.
Yeah. So that, and then I don't know about you guys, but I'm really bad with like long sleeves. Like I don't really know like what's the best long sleeve or like women's shirt. Like the go-to lady shirt. Like I feel like I have pretty good, like I think the flowy tanks are good. But like for an actual women's shirt, like I feel like I never get that exactly right. But
I feel like for us there's like 2 brands we try to sell the most of, and it's Bella. Mostly because Bella I feel safest with the fact that they don't over dye or re-dye or whatever. And we sell so many 3001 CVCs, like just 50-50 Bella tees, like all day long. Like we had this discussion in the sales office the other day about how like we rarely sell a Gildan anymore. It's like almost always Bellas or Next Levels. So yeah, a lot of Bella, a lot of Next Level, and then independent basically for like everything.
I love independent. Yeah,
I know.
Their
like
fleece is unbelievable.
Yeah, and we sell so much independent.
Yeah.
So, and again, with that, like for me, the biggest thing is just like knowing that it's consistent, like colors are consistent and fits are consistent, and sewing isn't like somebody buys an extra large today. If they buy an extra large in 2 months, it's going to fit the same as when they bought it. You know what I mean? I feel like for the longest time with American Apparel, people were like, I love American Apparel. And every time they buy a shirt, it's like, it fits differently.
It would always be different. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. It's always different. Yeah.
Yeah, we do a lot of Gildan still. Like we do just for like some promos as well as like print on demand. Like Gildan is like, it's surprising. I thought it was going to be way more 3001, but people really love that price point, you know? So we sell a lot of Gildan on the print on demand side.
Yeah. Schools, they don't want Bella Canvas at all. So they want something bigger, baggier, thicker. So, well, you know, like you said, Gildan is just that, you know. So whenever we do school stuff, they're never getting Bella.
I do like their hammer tee.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. Yeah,
yeah. We like.
Have you guys seen that Next Level 1800 yet? Have you guys gotten your hands on that? It's like a 5.5 ounce. It's like supposed to be a little bit more of a heavier weight, but it's like a 20 singles. So I just don't know how good it prints yet. But
yeah, like I said, the reason why we picked the Bella stuff is because we're doing it. Like I said, it really depends on the job, and we're switching in different inks. Like if we're doing discharge or water base or plastisol or whatever, and it's just nice knowing that if you're going to do a discharge print, it's going to look the same for all the shirts. It's not like a lot of times it's scary when we use a next level because it's like, okay, small, medium, and XL and 2X look the same, but all the larges are like gray instead of white. And it's because they, were dyed black because they were purple beforehand.
Right.
Well, that for me is the main reason why we like Bella over the other one. But yeah, that was just, I know there's certain things that like we like and different hats and stuff like that we gravitate towards. But it's just funny because, like I said, we had this discussion the other day that there's like 2 brands we sell so much of when there's like thousands of options. It's like we just do these 2 for some reason.
Well, Kevin, we're sponsored by Inksoft, if you didn't know that. And I don't know if Impress has online store capabilities. If they don't, well, then you need to check out Inksoft. But we have a question from Inksoft. And it goes like this. So although I might have to adjust it because it's, here it goes. What advice would you give your 25-year-old self? But I have a feeling you're just not that much past 25. And so I'm going to change that to 20-year-old self. So what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
I probably would have like worked on contracting things out versus trying to do everything myself. Like, I think I would have tried to maybe leverage some other shops' capabilities versus just like always thinking I had to get that piece of equipment to do that type of work. Like I think I would have maybe built, maybe not expanded to like a huge press right away that like really limited our space in the shop, and maybe kept like a little bit smaller of a press, and then found like a really good contract shop that could have done that stuff. Also, that's my 20-year-old self when we were like almost all retail, and then we evolved into a contract shop. So you can't really contract out contract. So like I think that, and then, I probably would say to hire good help earlier. Like I think that, like I think I would say just to make sure that I'm really hiring really competent people as fast as I could.
I feel like that's one thing. I don't know if we've talked about this before, but like shop owners, like all 3 of us, basically you get to a certain point where you're like, what would happen if, the shop burned to the ground tonight? Like, what would I do? Would I change anything, or would I keep everything the same? And I really don't know exactly what I would do, but sometimes when I'm having a rough day, I think of like, if the shop burned down tomorrow, I would 100% just like build a badass office in my house, and I would just farm, like keep doing upstate. But I would just, but this thing is we've been in the industry for so long now that like we know the shops who are badass at every aspect. You know what I mean? Like this guy's really good at printing this. This guy's an amazing embroiderer, or so on, all the things. So I feel like we have so many relationships now. I could just literally be like, all right, well, I'm farming all my printing to this guy, and this guy. And then I'm going to send the embroidery here, get good, pricing set up, and then just like work at home in my underwear all day. I have no employees to bitch at me. That sounds
nice or whatever, but I think you'd miss it. You'd miss the action.
100%. I 100% would miss it. But I'm just saying, like, you think about that and you're like, think of all the shit I wouldn't have to do. Like, I wouldn't have employees yelling at me if, they were having a bad day. I wouldn't have all these other things. I could just like, I just think about when I first started the company, or when I first started the first company, that I literally had my computer monitor and my workstation here, and I had a swivel chair, and then I would just like swivel the other way and play Call of Duty at 4 a.m. And then I would just spin back around, answer an email while like it was loading out or going into the next match. And then I would spin back and play again. I was like, I could do that now.
I wonder
that in my 30s.
Yeah.
I wonder how many printers went, back to being contractors, and how many contractors have gone to being printers, because, it's like you say, I could get rid of him. I won't have all the headaches of employees. I won't have the,
I don't think I would. I really don't think I could let it go.
But what I'm saying is you go to being contractor, right? Well, I wonder how many contractors have said, man, I'm just going to be my own printer because I'm tired of not getting shitty stuff in. I'm tired of missing deadlines or whatever. I'm just going to buy a press and do it myself.
It's the grass is greener.
Yep. Well,
for everybody,
And I think honestly, we are on the easier side. Like, I think it would be much easier for us to go over so one thing we did like 3 or 4 years ago is we pushed more to direct to consumer or direct to the end customer. And I think that's a much easier transition than we had we had a really big promotional product company as a customer. And, he was like, all right, I'm going to start my own thing because like I have to be, the producer. Like people want me to be the end they want to know they're getting it from the source. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. Like, and he like wanted to buy us and like, it just was not a cultural fit or anything like that. And so we're like, dude, like the best of luck to you, and from everything I hear, it's not going very good, and I think it just is like kind of hanging in there. Whereas like you have to kind of focus on your core competencies a little bit, and like, I think having production is like such a leveraged position because we can take like rush jobs, and we know that we can get that stuff done. Whereas like if you're focusing on other people's production schedules and like all those things, you might not be able to like really come through for a customer that when you need to.
That goes back to, doing what you're good at and then having some people do what you're not good at. And so if you're a good contractor, you're not in production. You don't understand like just what cleaning screens means or exposing a screen or emulsions or all this kind of stuff. And now all of a sudden you're going to go spend time on that, And so I've had that similar situation here. I've had a brand even that we were doing their printing and they said, we're going to bring this in-house and we're going to do it on our own. I'm like, oh, really? Have you ever done it yet? Because have you ever screen printed a shirt before? There's all of this learning to do when you could be focusing on your brand. You could be focusing on marketing your brand and growing your brand. And now all of a sudden you're going to spend probably most of your time trying to print it, trying to figure out how to get it printed,
Yeah.
So maybe it'll slow your growth down. Who knows? I mean, you'll bring it in-house, but it could
I think so. Decision. Yeah. I think if you start as a printer, you can expand, like you could hire people to do that other side, right? Like that, getting that direct to consumer. Whereas like, I think it's really hard for brands or like contractors to, unless they are purchasing a full on shop, I've seen that be successful.
Shop, you mean?
Yeah. Just like they're buying, like they just say like, here's millions of dollars to a shop. Like we want you to continue running it, do your thing. Like we're not going to touch it. I've seen that be successful. But starting something from the ground up, I think it's just like you said, you're going to miss so many opportunities on your core business because you're so focused on like on printing what you've already sold instead of working on like that next sell. But
100%. Yep.
What's a current bottleneck that you guys are facing?
Space. It's really just being so limited. Like we just got into that new warehouse like in the middle of last month because what happened was obviously with COVID. So when COVID hit, like our screen print embroidery like went through the floor. Like it just like disappeared from like Friday to Monday, just like a lot of everybody else. But then what picked up was print on demand. So what we did is we took a lot of this inventory space that we were using for like screen print embroidery, and we've switched all that over to like our print on demand inventory. And so, which was fine until like July, our screen print embroidery came back almost to where it was last year. And so then we had like no space to put it. So now like we're having really big problems with like getting things received in on time and like the quality of receiving those in because there's not a lot of space. And then like once that happens, so right now it's really just packaging everything together and organizing it so that it could just get to the press. Because when it gets to the press, it runs fine. It's just some of those times where it's like orders are getting delayed when we already have the blanks in house, and it's just like a bad look, So that's probably a big bottleneck is just trying to organize in the space we had without having to expand. And then we're just like, there's no way we have to get more space. So,
yeah. What about you, Andy? What do you have? What's on your mind as a bottleneck right now?
I thought you weren't
expecting me to answer you a question.
Bottleneck. I think that our biggest bottleneck probably now is embroidery because this is their season, so people are they're placing lots of orders right now for Christmas, and And I probably underestimated, because of COVID, I underestimated that volume. And so that was part of what happened on Saturday. We were printing. I was here printing. We just ran one press on Saturday. But then I had people here in embroidery, and they were running embroidery machines, because when on a Saturday, we're locked up, it's just production. They can get so much done, production, just those machines it's hardly turned off, So yeah, our biggest bottleneck has got to be embroidery. And it's very, very hard right now to find somebody to run an embroidery machine. I don't know, here where we are anyway. And it's too late to train anybody. So,
Right.
So that's a bottleneck.
We kind of, I don't know, it's hard to say, but there was a shop in town who did almost exclusively contract for custom ink. And that work just once again went through the floor. And the guy was kind of getting older. So he was just like, I'm not going to make it through this. I don't care to really try to rebuild it back up, because custom ink said hey, we're going to fill our own capacity first. And if there's anything left over, we'll give it to you. And he had 100 employees, shop. It was a big shop. So then that shop closed down. So it kind of there was a ton of really good talented people that we were able to say hey, come over here. Cause the same thing with you, our embroidery, we have 26 heads and we're running 6 days a week, 2 shifts, and it's just cause it's the time of the year, there's so much hats and beanies and all that type of stuff, but.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if I like any. That's the thing. That's the thing is with us is it's weird. I've never thought about getting into embroidery at all, because literally right across the street from us is a shop that does nothing but embroidery.
That's perfect for you.
Perfect.
That situation right there, you would have no reason to ever do
literally across the street.
That's perfect.
Super small town, old Main Street town, and across the street is a lady who just does nothing. She has a whole shop worth of employees, but all they do is embroidery. So I just literally am hey, how much is it for to do this? Obviously we have a wholesale thing with her. She's here it is. I'm okay, cool. Here's the box. She brings it back and it's done and over with.
You should lease her some space in what you got. Bring her into.
Well, she's got her own building she owns right across the street. So
that's a great setup. Yeah.
And it works out good. I mean, that's what's tricky is we get customers who are oh, do you do it in house? And it's it's a weird question to answer. I'm no, but I have a really good relationship with the person, and they never believe you. And you're yeah, they're right across the street. I'm no, seriously, I could hold up my phone and show you they're right across the street.
Kevin, do you have any questions for us?
Geez. So are you guys are mostly all retail, right? You guys don't do any contract?
I don't do any contract. It's all direct to customer.
We do about 20% contract.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what do you guys see as far as the next 5 years of the landscape? Do you see yourselves growing, or are you kind of working on just maintaining what you have? And also with the with digital, what do you see? Do you guys see yourselves getting into that, or do you kind of think you're going to stick with just screen printing?
Well, for me, we this past year bought that new G3. So I had full intention of within the next couple of years getting a digital squeegee. And the reason for that is to keep up with the trends and technology and all that stuff. But the biggest thing is we do a lot of high color count stuff. We have a lot of customers. It's oh, it's a 10 color, 12 color, all this other stuff. And then you look into it, and the real advantage to it is you have 2 white screens and then everything's digital. There's no making 12 screens. There's no mixing 12 inks. There's no
12 squeegees.
Everything that goes along with that. So that was the big reason why we got the gauntlet, was to be able to do that. But with us personally, this year, I don't know how to say it without sounding like an asshole, but this year has been a really good year for us. The only reason why it really slowed down in the beginning is just because I think the world thought everything was ending, and it was everybody was scared. But as soon as that faded, we were right back to being busy, and we're slammed right now. And again, we're working on Saturdays and stuff too, and working late every night to kind of keep up with what's happening. But I think the biggest changeover was just so many of our customers getting the idea of doing like online stores and fulfillment and stuff like that. So my bottleneck right now is just trying to, like, I've kind of created a market with my customers to be like, hey, we could offer you fulfillment in online stores, but I didn't have like a perfect system for that yet. You know what I mean? I didn't have like, how am I going to store everything? Do I print everything up front, or do I do it more on demand, or what do I do? So like every day I'm like doing half my day in research on that, and then the other half like just doing normal stuff. So I feel like we're just going to grow with our normal printing stuff, and then we're going to eventually get digital capabilities with on press, and then we're just going to build up fulfillment stuff. So I feel like that's kind of the direction that we're headed. So
Cool. Very cool.
I haven't been convinced that digital is faster yet. Because you said, instead of making, I think if you're ever making over 8 or 9 screens, it's too many screens anyway. So, we don't have we have a lot of, I don't know how much, multicolor stuff we have compared to you, Dylan, but it's like this. So I remember when we had the DTG machine and all of that pre-press work it took to get that color to translate right to press. to the DTG machine. Sometimes we'd have to tweak it and we'd send it again, tweak it, send it again till we got that red just right or whatever it is. And so I would love to work with the digital squeegee, for example, just for a week or whatever, for a day, and see what it takes to actually see how it works. Is it faster, really, truly faster? Because right now I can tell you, if we have to do an 8-color job, we can get to press pretty fast and we can print it pretty fast. And we don't have to spend $300,000 or whatever on a digital squeegee, and so is that true? Can you get to press faster, and have it work out like the first time?
I think the biggest misconception with a lot of people with the digital squeegee isn't necessarily the fact that, it's all the color counts, but it's like I said, it's all the back end of like making all the screens, mixing all the inks, all that stuff for every single job, when it's actually cheaper to just make your 1 or 2 whites and then you're putting the ink on top. And the other thing too, the difference between doing regular traditional DTG and then doing hybrid is you're screen printing the underbase. So you're doing the hardest part of the process first anyway. You're getting something to have great adhesion on the shirt, getting the base on, and then all you're doing even now, like if we're doing a 12-color print, we're using high mesh, thinner inks to make it be soft on top. When the digital squeegee is doing the exact same thing, it's just printing thinner inks on top. As long as it looks good, I think you're going to have the same washability, same durability. Like I said, I feel like the difference with the digital squeegee is getting rid of all the other stuff. It's kind of like when you went from film and all the stuff you had to do before it even got to the screen versus the CTS. So it's kind of the same thing. And like you're skipping a bunch of steps that you would normally have to do to make screens and all that stuff, when now you can just hit a button and, it's obviously not that simple to just hit a button and have it print. But the biggest thing is, like I said, like if you
figure it out.
And plus, like if you're doing a lot of simulated process stuff, like a lot of it is trial and error, like stuff we just talked about with, on our last episode. And it's just kind of like, if you do this huge process print and you don't like it the way it looks, you have to go back, tweak a couple screens, burn those screens, put them back on press, try it again. Digital squeegee, you could just go on the computer, tweak a couple things and hit print again, and it'll go right back to printing it again. So
yeah,
I just kind of trying to future-proof the shop a little bit to where I'm ready for it if I want it. If I decide not to get it, then fuck it, I won't get it. But like now I want to be ready if that's what I want to do.
We did some like a pretty in-depth cost analysis on it, and it's more profitable once you pay the machine off. That period, because the capital expenditure so much is like huge, right? Like if you're spending $300K on it, right? Like regardless if you're spending that upfront in cash or you're like most of us, like most people, I guess I shouldn't say us, but we lease quite a bit of stuff, because especially with digital, like by the time you're done with it, it's probably going to be outdated. You're going to want to replace it with something else. But with that, it's like if you're paying it off, like that payment per impression can like add up quickly, but if you can pay it off clear and you're still using it, there's a ton of savings, from like a labor perspective, as well as, just kind of like standardizing it, right? You don't have to like, also like what you have to take into account, you don't have to mix ink anymore. Right. So like how much money do all of us have like sitting? I don't know how you guys do it, but we do PMS matching and like it's free.
Same. It's all on the shelf.
We try to push people, right? But like we try to push people to 186, but they might want 185, and it's like, all right, shit, like let's get 185 out here. So like how much money do like we really have like just sitting on the shelves too, right?
Yeah, but
like we don't have to worry about anymore.
Can you hit 185 with the digital squeegee? You know, so that's a
good question. Yeah, that's the issue too. Yeah.
What if you can't? And then you drop color. You're going to like print a spot color just for 185 because they have to have 185 or whatever. I think this would be a good. We should have DFW Inc. on the podcast. He just had a digital squeegee installed, like I don't know, last month or something like that.
Yeah.
And it would be really interesting, I think, because he's so fresh with it. You know, like what is it like when you first ran it on day one?
Who we should talk to is Michelle Moxley.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Who does all the R&D at MR.
Both, actually. We should have them both on because as a shop owner, you know, like you get this press and you get this, I think you got a striker and a digital squeegee. And you get this, that's a huge package, right? That's not just $300K. That's like even then some. And so you invest in this.
It's 2 houses.
That's 2 houses.
You know, and so what's your ROI on that? Is the work that you have, does it make sense? Like, are you always printing these crazy multicolored jobs? And like only, you know, is that your thing?
That's what I said. It's not necessarily that every shop has to go in this direction. It's just like, does it work for you? Because realistically, it shouldn't replace, like a lot of people like to get in a debate of like screen printing versus digital. And it's like, it's just another tool in your toolbox. It shouldn't just be like, right. It shouldn't be like, I'm a digital guy and I'm a screen printing guy. It should be like, no, like, and that's the same reason why I said we do plastisol and we do water-based, is because it's just another tool to have to say to your customer comes in, it's like, hey, this is the right tool for your job.
Yep.
So like you could have it here. Like if you have the money to buy it and you know you're going to have the work for it, like it's just another tool to have to be like, hey, oh, you have a fucking 900 color print? Cool. Let me throw it on press and print it digitally. Like, it's just another thing to have.
Totally.
Like, Kevin, I have 2, okay? One is that 25-year-old self, what I would have told myself is I wanted to chime in on that. And that is I would have just said to slow down, because for me anyway, I was in a rush to like grow. I was in a rush to be successful, or I was in a rush to get there. And what I realized after I got there or got further along, that for me anyway, some of the fun part is the struggle. You know, some of that, like, you know, dreaming of an auto, those were like awesome days. I'd be in my garage and be printing and be like, this fucking sucks. You know, my hands are killing me or whatever, or I'm so slow, or I wish I could go faster. And so like, those were some great days, you know? And so I kind of rushed through that, just wanting to be further along. And so I wish I would have just slowed down a little bit. And the second thing I have a question for you is what do you think of when you hear the word success? Kind of a deep one.
Yeah. I'd say like self-fulfillment, you know, like I think I don't know. That is a good question.
You know, because
success, I think success just looks like, to me at least, like the ability to structure my life in a way that I don't have to like not getting too consumed by things, right? And just like having the ability to like pivot and be like, I don't really want to work too much anymore. And I'm not so like tied down, and I'm like, God, you know, I have to like take this job. Like I have to do this because if I don't, I can't pay that, you know, that Maserati payment. Not to say that I would ever have a Maserati, but like, you know, there's people who think that's what success looks like, you know, is getting the Maserati and like having to like show a bunch, you know, and it's like, I think it's just being happy within myself, you know, like on a day-to-day basis, and just being able to support, you know, a comfortable lifestyle, and like provide like a future for like, you know, I don't have a family right now, but you know, eventually one day having a family and just being able to support them and to not have to like stress so much about like money in a modest sense, like not being crazy, but like just being able to know like, okay, our basic needs are met, on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, you could take a guy like, I don't know, Steve Jobs and say, well, he was really successful, but if his dream was to be a great bass player and he wasn't, well, then was he successful? I mean, maybe not. So,
yeah.
I think
because that's what I think of when I think Steve Jobs is his sick ass bass licks.
I know, and also to go, and also to go back to what you were saying as far as like slowing down. I think that's like unbelievable good advice, because I think that there is so like the stories that you have are generally the stories of like overcoming struggle, right? Or like, oh man, this thing really sucked, but like we got through it, right? Like we stuck with it, we stuck through it. It's not necessarily like, well, I got an auto, it's like, well, it was just like everything that led up to it, is really like a lot of stories. Like I think back, yeah, like I mean, like when we moved into our first shop, like Shane and I was 19 and Shane was I think 20. And we were still living with our parents. So like we had like this space that was like ours. Like we could do whatever we wanted in this, like, it was like such freedom. Like it was like having like a business, but it was just like having this like physical space that we can like do whatever we wanted in, and like I think back on those times like so fondly, because one day we're like printing shirts and the next day we're like chugging beers and like having a party at the shop, or like we're chugging beers while printing shirts. Like we can't do that anymore. Like there's so many like rules now, like with the employees, it's like we can't drink beer and like print shirts. But
yeah, it used to be at the end of every day, we'd go back to the dock, throw up in the door, have some beers, smoke cigarettes, everything, they can just stand there and bullshit. Now, like you just said, there's rules and it's really tough to pull that kind of stuff off. So
yeah.
Well, back to your thing too. I can't hear anybody say success without thinking of Jonathan and his shop. And I can't hear anybody say stoked without thinking of your shop. Like anytime anybody's like, I'm stoked, I'm just like immediately like, I think of your shop. Or somebody says success, I think Jonathan.
Yep. That wasn't always the name of his shop.
What? Jonathan?
Yeah, it was something else. What was it? I have it saved in his text as his contact.
Is it something about Breaking Bad? Because he was talking about how he always made those Breaking Bad shirts.
No, it was actually, so it was called, his shop used to be called Jonathan Edwards Press.
I'd say success is definitely better. That was a good move.
That's awesome. Yeah. Do you have like a most inspiring job that you've had over the years that kind of like somewhat changed your business model?
Like in the sense like that it kind of changed the trajectory of like where we were at, like to where
like
we
for
were
us,
going.
Yeah. Like for us, for example, we never thought that we were going to do stuff for, like big, like contractor companies, like guys who build houses or whatever. But we like super fell into that niche, but now it's like one of our biggest niches. So you have something like that kind of like changed the direction of the way that your company operates or whatever from one customer?
Yeah. Like how we got into promotional products. I mean, it's not the coolest industry by any means. We were trying to be the band merch guys, right? But it was just like, we were on a manual, and then our first press was like a 1994 Tough Javelin. And it was just like a nightmare to print stuff. So like, this one guy came up and he was like, hey, I have a promotional product company and I have like 50 orders. Do you guys want it? And we're like, 50 orders? Like that was like a week's worth of orders for us, or 2 weeks worth of orders. And he's like, he's just going to give it to us all right now. And we're like, oh, you know what? Like, this is an interesting idea. Like, we're obviously not making as much money, but we don't have like any customer service. Like we don't have to go out and sell all these jobs, and they are constantly coming in. Like we can actually like build stability on this. Like it was no longer like 1 week we were, super slam. The next week we were like painting walls just to like do something, and so like I'd say definitely like moving into that contractor space. Like I think I think it's it burns a lot of people out very quickly, but I think it could be very transformative in the way like if you can do it right, like building that consistent workflow coming into your company, that definitely changed it for us. Like without contract, we wouldn't be able to afford like the equipment we have or like have the team we have. Like we have team members from like 6 years ago. So definitely like that guy coming in and being like, we have 50 orders. We had no idea what contract printing was at that time, you know.
When it comes to contractors, I think it's all about being selective. You know, there's some that you just cannot work with, and there's some that is just a good fit. And so finding those that are a good fit for both of you and forming this relationship, like a partnership, essentially, then it works for both, you know, for both parties. It's a win-win. But there's other contractors, it just doesn't make sense. And there's always worried about the cheapest price and the fastest turnaround. And can you go cheaper than that? You know, I mean, it's just like, I don't know. It's finding the right ones and being selective and figuring out which ones are a good fit for you in your shop.
No, I don't want to get you in trouble or anything, but like, do you like doing contract, or is the goal to ultimately get enough direct customers to kind of phase the contract out?
Yeah. So like I don't think like the long-term strategy is to like, we don't focus a ton of energy in growing our contract business. We just have, we've just established ourselves, I guess, in that world that work just it comes, you know, like we're able to build, and into what Andy was talking about, like being selective. And the way we are selective is we just charge really high amount of money for people we don't want to work with. And if they're like willing to pay that. I feel like
that's everybody's out.
Yes,
when it comes to a shitty contract customer, the first thing is like, well, actually a one color print now is $550 each.
Yep.
And they're just like, oh, fuck that.
We used to have two contract pricing sheets I could get to people. One was just the standard, and then the other was preferred. And so it's exactly that. You know, the standard was like, man, there's this one that's just, it never really works out right. You know, the POs are wrong, or the shirts are last minute or delayed, or who knows what. All these, there's very problematic, right? And that's one set of pricing. And then there's the preferred, and then eventually it kind of works itself out.
Yeah. And we, you know, I had this like, vision of grandeur that like, okay, cool. Like we're going to work our way up, and like, we're going to become this really big shop, and we're going to have a ton of contract customers. And so we could get to those like top 10, you know, promotional product distributors, and we're going to become like one of their printers. And I started getting in with them, and I realized that they could be just as like terrible as a person who like sends us 5 jobs a year. And I was just like, all right, we got to rethink this. Like we got to kind of like have, you know, another way of like printing t-shirts, which it serves you well. Like, I mean, that if that's a piece of advice, I'd say it's like having the most diverse customer base as possible, while not like compromising the integrity of the service. You know,
great piece of advice. As far as diverse customer base, that saved our butts in COVID.
Yeah, same here.
Piece of advice.
And that's the thing that scares me the most about contract stuff is, like you said, with that guy near you who had 100 employees, custom ink pulled out, and he's like, well, more shutting down.
Yeah.
Like there's all these shops that have, you know, like 30 autos, and they're doing stuff for Nike. And then Nike's just like, I don't like what you did or what you said. We're going to send our business over here. And they're like, cool. Now I got to fire, 200 people.
Yep.
Like,
yeah.
And terrible. That's terrifying. Like I wouldn't want to do that. I feel like I would have a stroke if I was just like, oh, cool. I have to go tell 200 people to like go home.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry about it. Yeah.
Well, Kevin, I remember hanging out with you in Long Beach for, it seemed like a couple hours. I don't know, Dylan, did you get a chance to meet him this year in Long Beach?
I don't think so. Yeah.
I think I saw him from a distance, and I was just like this, and then just kept walking.
So that was you.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Yeah.
You threw rocks at the back of your head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it happens next year, which apparently they've rescheduled it for April, and if it happens, then we definitely have to meet up again. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's such a bummer. That's like one of my favorite times is kind of like getting together with like, different screen printing shops, because nobody really gets it like us. So it's just like fun just to like get to meet like guys like you, like that, like we're all kind of cut from a similar cloth, that, it like we get to have a friendship on a level that it's like, we know what each other is dealing with, So I've really, that's one part of like the, our screen printing journey is just like the friends and the people I've gotten to meet along the way, that definitely like make it a little bit easier, like even just like messaging, back and forth, like, oh, what are you guys doing with this, and just like kind of getting like a gauge of like what people are like. It's like, all right, we're not crazy. We're not like going through anything weird. It's like these people have already done it. So
Well,
yeah,
thanks,
it's definitely
man.
a bummer to not have that like face-to-face interaction like this coming year, but
it's like one of my favorite memes, like the one from Narcos or whatever, where he's like sitting on the like swing outside, and it says like nobody at the kid's birthday party wanted to talk about screen printing. It's just like him in the yard, like by himself. And it's just like, that's how I feel.
Yep.
Like everything that I do in my own life or around or parties, like I'm always that guy in the corner, like nobody here wants to talk about screens or ink or like, and then you go to something like Long Beach and it's like everybody wants to talk about screen printing. And it's like, it's funny because every time I go to those things, I usually take a good portion of my staff because they like to, meet people and do other things. And like some of them are there for like the trip. Like obviously they just want to fuck around in Long Beach. They don't want to talk about screen printing. And it's like two of my guys that, are like my best friends. They're there obviously to like party. And like, I'll stand on a street corner and talk to other printers for like 5 hours about something. And they're just like, I'll turn around and they're gone. And they're like, you were just talking about printing. Like, I don't want to hear, I'm at work all day talking to you about it. I don't want to fucking talk about it here. So it's just funny, like how us owners and stuff just want to talk about it all the time. Cause it's like our people, you know what I mean? It's like,
oh, totally. Well, and also like I'm sure it was the same with you guys, but I love screen printing. I think it's like super cool. Like I think it's like a like all these posters, like almost all the posters in our office are all screen printed. It's just like I think it's such a cool it's a really cool medium because you don't have to be an artist.
Exactly what I was
like
just going to say.
You could produce art, like there's an art form to us producing other people's art,
it's
so
like, it's like secondhand art.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I'm not a person, I can't draw very good. But I love like seeing like when we print a different technique or we do something like that turns out really cool. I'm like, wow, that's awesome that we were able to do that. So when getting together with like, different shops and just seeing like what people are doing, I'm like, damn, that's awesome. Like we got to try that when we get back or something like that,
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's great talking to you, man, and hope that we can hang out in Long Beach next year. Before we go though, got to ask you what's for dinner.
Oh, geez. I think I might be doing maybe some barbecue. Maybe pick up some barbecue.
Nice. Do they have good barbecue there?
Yeah, there's some pretty good barbecue. Yeah, we have quite a bit of people who are like competition barbecue people that are based here. So yeah, not anything like not St. Louis or anything like that, but
yeah, Texas.
Yep, exactly. Cool. Yeah, but thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it, and it's been really awesome.
Yeah, dude. Yep. We'll see you around.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
See you, man.
Yeah.
And you didn't care what I'm going to fucking have for dinner. What are you going to have for dinner?
I am going to go home and make steaks in a cast iron skillet.
Well, the people wanted to know that. I mean, that's a badass thing to do. I was getting ready to, but you said, okay, man, see ya.
Well, we have the power of editing. What are you having?
Burritos.